Yeah, welcome to this talk about Gerrit UI new features in the past year. The talk is given by myself, Ben, and Frank, who will take over in a minute. And yeah, first of all, I wanted to say who we are. So this is the Gerrit frontend team. As most of you know, the frontend is mostly developed by a team at Google. So we're 6 software developers at Google. It's Dhruv, Camille, Chris, Milutin, Frank, and I. And there's also Paradox, who's contributing a lot. So he's associated with Wikimedia, and he's a contributor to this. And yeah, our newest team member is Camille. You might have not have seen him, but and Chris is our tech lead at the moment, but he's out. So I'm saying hi from all of us, and yeah, and now we want to walk you through a lot of small things. So I think Luca has already introduced you to the cool stuff that is in the 2 recent releases, and we now just wanted to highlight a few nice things that you can see in the UI that you might not have noticed and might find interesting.
Yeah, the first feature here is from Dhruv. This is add mentions. This is a really useful feature to tag someone in a comment directly instead of making them sort of look through the change and find things that mention them. The most important thing, I think, is the integration with the attention set and the CC. When you mention somebody, they get put back in the attention set or added to the CC, and it's a lot easier to find comments and let people know you want them to look at something. Like on the front end, we usually have 2 reviewers on each change. And if I want to ask the other reviewer something, but they've already reviewed, then they won't be in the attention set, and I have to manage all this myself. But with the mention, I can just take them. It's really convenient. The second feature we have is Markdown. This is mainly done by me. A previous Markdown implementation was sort of coupled together with some if statements and switch cases and regular expressions, and we only were able to support a couple features this way. We had links and lists and some code blocks, but one of the #1 feature requests we got was to add full Markdown support, both externally and within Google. And so this is a rewrite I did this fall to wrap this library mark.js, which implements the common mark spec. It has this sort of a full suite of Markdown that you can use in your comments. I think formatting your comments well is the #1 way to be understood quickly and get your point across in review. And we still have integration with the custom linking you can do in your Gerrit config if you want to point to some internal URL and make sure it automatically gets linked. You can still do that. Okay, next feature is the auto theming. This work was done by Milutin this spring. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can set your Gerrit to coordinate your theme with your operating system. This is really nice for new users. We can detect that they want dark mode without them having to futz around after they begin. And the #1 benefit also is you can tell your operating system to base your theme on your clock. So at nighttime you'll get dark mode, and now Gerrit will follow suit, and that's really great. We can match the rest of your computer, and it looks really good. Next feature we have is copy links. This is also by Milutin. This is inspired from Google's open source code search product. It's really nice to pick exactly how you want to copy things from the UI without having to cobble it together or find the part of the UI with the text you want. This is really nice, and the main benefit I use is I get a lot of shortcuts, so I know I can push L and then D or whichever one I want, and the ones I use the most are just like really automatic, and it's great to copy things quickly, and I can get back to what I'm doing. Next feature here is rebase with conflicts. Previously, it was quite annoying. You would try to rebase in the UI, and you get a little error, and it's not really a big conflict, but you still have to go back to your local commands, check everything out, rebase it yourself, and put it back and figure out the conflict. So now this is a really nice checkbox. You can just check it. We'll put the changes. We'll sort of save the conflicts, and then you can make this little tweak in your edit UI. This is great when it's just like a little flake. Git doesn't really detect the difference. Doesn't know how to merge automatically, and I just want to explain one little thing to my code, and I don't need to go through this whole song and dance to make it happen. Next is bulk actions. This work was done by Drew and me this spring. This is sort of a new workflow for doing common actions from your dashboard, voting, changing topic, hashtag, adding reviewers. The main benefit we have is that you can apply the same action to many changes at once from your dashboard or from the search result page. This is great when you know which changes you want, you have a search query for them, and then you can just pick all the changes in your search result and add a reviewer or something. This is a common request we got for, I am trying to send a bunch of security fixes from this repo to this other repo, or from this branch to this other branch, and you end up with a bunch of changes, and then you have to go manually and add a reviewer, or trigger the CI on each of them one by one and do 500 clicks, and now you can sort of do it all at once. And it's a very smooth new workflow that we like for this. The main response we got for this was, please add more actions and support more things I can do on my groups of changes. Let me think about my group of changes in a better way. And so that's a great response we got. We really like that, and we hope we can do some more features here in the future, or add more action support.
Regarding mentioned users and Markdown, since 3.7.0 is released, were these features default enabled before the release, or are they still experimental flags?
I don't know the answer for the 3.7 release. They've been enabled internally on the Gerrit review host as we sort of get them ready to go, but I don't know the final status.
So yeah, I think I've already heard that the mentioned features is still turned off. I mean, there's also, we could also say it's like there's a couple of things that you can still polish about it. Because, for example, the auto completion is some folks say this needs to be still a bit optimized. But yeah, you can still enable it, and I think we should enable it by default. I think Markdown should actually be on by default. But yeah, let us know if that's not working.
There is a second question by Wikimedia. It says, can copy links be extended, maybe via Gerrit config? I noticed Markdown, and I could use an extra for MediaWiki syntax.
Yeah, we've actually already gotten the same feedback internally. Just yesterday, I think I got 2 user reports asking the same. It's quite funny if as soon as you launch a new feature similar to the bulk actions, it's first, oh yeah, that's nice, but actually, can you extend it in some more ways? So yeah, what we have to do for the copy links, we will then have to add some configuration code or some API, some plugin API or whatever to allow this, and that's a great idea. And yeah, I think we'll probably want to do this, but it's not scheduled yet, and it doesn't exist yet. But yeah, sure. Whenever it comes to links, everyone wants to customize them.
So a question for me on the suggest fix. So I haven't seen it on Gerrit review. So is that included in 3.7 or in master, or is something that will be coming in the future, the suggest fix?
No, that's that's actually an experimental feature intentionally. So I guess you've seen it on some slide, and it has only been there because the experimental feature is enabled for the Gerrit frontend team. So yeah, I'll go into this later because it does exist already for checks. So check results can have fixes. I'll show this in a minute. Then also say something more. But yeah, it's basically a preview for suggesting fixes from reviewers. That's already possible, but it's not quite polished, so it's not included in the release.
And there is another question on bulk actions. Say, can you use or extend the bulk actions for the rebase command as well? So you can select a series of changes and say rebase all of them?
Not today. This is something we definitely want to add. This is on our short list of features that we want to add to this list. Just needs to be implemented, but it is not extendable yet.
So yeah, this slide is about approval copying information. So it's often annoying that if you have multiple rounds of reviews, that especially as a reviewer, you've already given your +2, and then at some point you get pinged again and say, hey, your +2 is missing, and you say, but I've already given it, and then it's not always clear when did this get removed, or why does it not apply anymore. So yeah, we've gotten feedback, especially also from the Chrome and Android folks, that this is super annoying if the reviewer is in different time zones, etc. So we've now made it much easier to go through this process. First change, of course, is to actually add the user back to the attention set if a vote was already given, but then it's outdated because of a new patch set. So this is kind of the first information that you need. Then for the owner, when you upload on the command line, you get the information immediately if any labels have been removed because of how their copying is configured. And then thirdly, you also get this into the email notification. So on the one hand, you are told which if approvals were removed, and you are also told if submit requirements are unsatisfied if a change has been submittable before. So you have always a clear understanding when something has changed in that area. And that also ties a little bit into this file status UI feature, which at the first glance seems to be a separate feature, but it was actually motivated also by this work stream about approval copying, because one of the things that we were also told is that when you've already reviewed patch set 1 and then you come back and now it's patch set 5, you want to have a clearer understanding what actually happened between those. So of course you can say compare patch set 1 against patch set 5, but then you don't really know what happened with these files. So we now have made it clearer what's happening. So for example, in the image that you see, so the 5th file theme util was added already in patch set 1. So it's a new file in terms of the entire change. But in patch set 1 is what was already added, and then between patch set 1 and 5 it was modified. Where the 3rd file, the test file, was only added after patch set 1. So on patch set 1, it wasn't modified at all, it was not part of the change, but then it became part of the change. And that's very relevant for approval copying, because most likely that file is the reason why you have to vote +2 again. And yeah, this makes it a little bit easier. So now we have the next small feature is about file mode. So actually, until a couple of weeks ago, I didn't know exactly myself what kind of file types and file modes can you have in Git and in Gerrit. I only knew that sometimes you would see Gerrit telling you, oh, file mode 006 something and has changed to 01 whatever, and then you're kind of what does it mean exactly? And we've now made it easier to understand this, because actually Git and Gerrit only have 4 different file modes, so there's nothing else. So there's just the regular files that you know of. Then something can be executable, it can be a symlink, or it can be a Git link. And most of the time everything is just a regular file, but if that's not the case, or if something changes in terms of file mode, we are now calling this out explicitly in the file list. Before you could only so this actually needed some backend work as well, done by Yusuf. But now you can actually see this in the file list directly instead of expanding the diff and then seeing some kind of subtle difference. And yeah, if something changes from regular to executable, we even show you a nice warning icon. Yeah, the next two slides are about the checks UI. This has been launched a while ago, and I've already given a couple of talks about this, so I assume you kind of know what it is. I just now want to run you through a couple of details, and I think it's pretty best if I switch to demo mode here. So this slide is simply calling out that you can have multiple attempts per run, and then you can navigate them. But let's have a look how this is doing in real life. So for example, I can go here. So this is a change I found this morning on Chromium Review. What you see here now, you have 8 patch sets, and on every patch set you can have check results. So if you're interested, you can also go back in time and navigate. Oh, what was going on patch set 7, and you actually see, oh, there's an error here, so I can look at that, or I can. Or I can on the latest patch set, there's what also happens is that certain tests and analyzers run multiple times, and that's something that happens, for example, here with the Chromium pre-submit. And so you can now navigate all these different attempts and see what was going on. Do we actually have maybe something? Oh yeah, interesting. So for this one, we can, for Fuja, there's like 3 attempts, and the first 2 attempts were errors. So I can also say, okay, let's have a look at this and go deeper into an analysis of this. So this is the feature around new attempts. But yeah, normally you would really just look at all the attempts. And yeah, now we're back to the standard mode. Yeah, but while we are here, we can also have a look at other things. So the overview of checks is always given here. So if there's any warning or error, you see a nice chip. We also allow plugins to have custom actions. So for example, this Chromium plugin pops up its own dialog. You can choose certain things to run, which is pretty nice, and I think something that other plugins might also want. They're also providing these 2 actions on top level in this UI, but this is really just optional. So this is this is just if the plugin really wants to go deeper. Now I'm switching to Gerrit Review. And if you add a specific experiment parameter to the URL, you get this nice UI widget where you can go and get some fake checks. So this is always nice for me to debug things or to demo stuff. And yeah, one thing I wanted to highlight now is the ability to first integrate check results into the file diff. So if I look at patch set 1 of the commit message, I'll actually see 3 check results showing up inline in the diff. So if you have a check result, you can just specify a certain code location, and then the check result will show inline. And our hope is that eventually this is going to be replacing the robot comment ability. So instead of sending robot comments and also having check results, we would rather want to just have check results and associate them directly in with certain lines if needed. And yeah, one thing that I've mentioned earlier is that you can even associate those results with fixes. So your analyzer or backend system can add suggested fixes to check results, and then the user could preview and apply this here. I think apply fix is just not enabled because now it's already a merged change, so we can't apply it, but it would go as usual into the edit patch set and then let you work with that. So you can even apply multiple fixes into one edit patch set and then publish them together. Right. That's some news about the checks UI. I also have pointers to the API and to example plugins. I quickly want to highlight this because I wanted to emphasize how simple this actually is to integrate with this. So the API is basically documented in one file. So this checks.ts file, and all you do is you register, and then we call back to you when a change is available, and then we give you the change number, and then you give us the check results. And in reality, this looks a bit like this. So this is one of our examples. That's the checks plugin that we currently use on Gerrit Review. So if you want to write a checks plugin, you just call install, and then you say, okay, whenever a change loads, then we call this fetcher. And what the fetcher does, that's this on my other slide, well, it just makes an API call and then returns these results. And the only thing that it really has to do is converting whatever it gets to the correct API format of what we expect to be check results and check runs. But yeah, so this is not rocket science. So if at your company you want to write such a plugin, here are examples, and I think it's pretty nice, and it's probably something that's really more interesting from you than improving Gerrit on its own. Like I said, I think in the maintainer talk, this integration story and this idea of how do we integrate other stuff into Gerrit is pretty very important. Cool.
So what's the difference between run and attempt?
Suppose you have some CI system that runs a test on patch set 5, and then it fails, but for the test is flaky, then you can run the same run again, and then that becomes the second attempt of the same run. So the check run is really just for one patch set you have a certain system or analyzer or test with a name, and then if the same thing runs again and by that invalidates the other results it has been producing in its first attempt, then that's what we call an attempt.
Thank you. Then there is a question from me. So you talked about that checks is going to take over the robot comments, right? If I did not misunderstand. And if that is the case, where do you store, let's say, the line level comments? Because at the moment, what we do also on the Gerrit CI that we do against Gerrit is that we call the checks plugin that is deprecated by saying, listen, can you please, that's the result of the check. But for the robot comments, at the moment, we call the robot comments, so we rely on Gerrit to store the robot comments. And if that responsibility goes on checks, a plugin that is just a client side, where are you going to store that information?
So what we'll keep having as change messages, right? I mean, your CI systems will send votes and then say something like, okay, something is broken, right? This is something that we're not going to change. But as far as I know, do we have any? I think on Gerrit Review we don't have any robot comments that are created by systems.
Not exactly. I believe so for the validation of Gerrit, no, but for the validation of plugins, we do basically a check on the format, code style, and we feed back the robot comment from there, from the pipeline. So we can, of course, let's say, change that if there is another storage. It's not the robot comments, but Jenkins itself does not provide any storage. So if, let's say, that information is to be stored in Jenkins, so we will need to implement in Jenkins a small database for that. So in a way that the checks plugin calls Jenkins, that had a small database where it says, okay, for this build, then I need to remember that there was a comment for this file in this line. But it's a bit unnatural, let's say, to put in Jenkins.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, you also with test results. I mean, that's also a discussion we already had with checks. Is that if you on all the 10 different patch that you run all these tests and you have all these test results, you typically would store them somewhere and not necessarily in Gerrit, right? So, and similar, like if this runs on Jenkins, you can also, instead of really having a database, you can still just have this result text file, and this translation to being a check result can happen on the fly when you request them, right? But yeah, that's a longer discussion. I mean, I'm not saying we are retiring this, retiring robot comments tomorrow. It will be a longer conversation. We also have other users of this. But overall, we feel like Gerrit is not the right place, especially if you go a little bit deeper and richer with all this. So at Google internally, we have lots of analyzers running, and if you would throw all these robot comments all into Gerrit, then Gerrit would also kind of explode, or would need another kind of database that it's not really meant for.
There is another question from the audience. Are there tools, utilities to easily generate comments/fixes given a check style XML or JUnit XML? And are checks comments automatically discarded at the next attempt?
Yes. So this automatically discarding. I mean, no, since Gerrit doesn't store anything, we are not discarding anything. But we always make this HTML call, or we make this plugin call, and whatever the plugin returns, we will show it. But if by default, or we only show if you go to the change, you only see the data from the latest attempt for the latest patch set, and then on demand you can look into older results if you want. The tools and utilities for just running a check that's a great idea, but I would also love more investment there, but that really depends on the build and test system that you are using, and we don't know, right? I mean, Gerrit is really just a code review system and like a source control system, and the build and test story is very different. So if you want to run check style, it really depends on what are you using? Are you using Bazel or Maven, and what's your CI system, and where would this run? So this should probably be more a tool of Jenkins or your CI system, and we just want to try to make it very, very easy to feed this into Gerrit using this checks API, and we hope it's sufficiently simple enough. Quickly highlight submit requirements. I know, Luca, you also have a lightning talk on this afternoon, I think, about submit requirements and how they replace Prolog. But I was not 100% sure how much emphasis this is being given during the summit. So I definitely didn't want to miss the chance and highlight this, because I think this is just super cool. And also from a UI perspective, our UX designer has spent a lot of time optimizing this, and is now really looking good. So on the one hand, on the dashboard, you can always hover over the status and you get a clear understanding what's going on. And I mean, the basic idea with submit requirements really was you're not just shown some kind of labels and then you're wondering why is something submittable or not, but you get a very, very clear and precise overview of what the submit requirements are and whether they're fulfilled and what you can do about them. And what I like extra much is this view conditions thing. And I think for that one, I definitely want to quickly go into presentation mode. So I think here it's not super fancy, but yeah, you can always, so whenever you think, oh, what's this submit requirement, and you don't really understand it, you can actually go and look what the actual condition is. And I think this is custom rule because it has been migrated. I was wondering why that is. So it's maybe let's quickly look at a new change. Truth. Here we are, and now Is the V condition nicer? Oh yeah, now this is nice. And actually it highlights something that's extra nifty. So these symmetry requirements are, instead of prolog, they're really just these Boolean expressions. And what we even do in the UI is we underline them, and it's probably not, you can't see this in the presentation, but this underline is red, the first one, and the second one is green. So you even know which of these Boolean predicates are fulfilled or not. So you get a much better and clearer understanding of what has to be fulfilled. And we, I think, we can also, for this one, we also see that there's, for example, there can be not just a submit condition, when can this be submitted, but there can also be an override condition. So for code owners in Chrome, we know there can also be an owner's override vote to override this. Right, cool. But yeah, I don't want to go deeper. I assume Luca will also talk about this later for a bit. So then this brings me to my last slide, and then we can also have some time for a little bit more questions. So yeah, last slide is under the hood. I mean, other than what we've just shown you and like all these larger features that you've seen already in Luca's first talk, there's, as a front-end team, we're just also doing a lot of small stuff, also a lot of infrastructure stuff. For the last years, we've been very busy just converting to TypeScript and migrating to Lit. And we are also working on latency improvements. So for example, if you have a change with 20 files and you expand all the diffs, this will be now twice as fast because we're doing web worker-based syntax highlighting, which is pretty nice. And you can also switch back and forth between change page and diff page instantly. So I think 1 year ago, that was really still just a full page load, essentially, if you would go from the change page to the file page. So it would always be 1 or 2 seconds. Now it's just instant. It's just switching the views back and forth. One really nice feature I like very much is the dashboard auto reloading. I think we've introduced it about a year ago, that if you've been away from a Gerrit tab for, I think, more than 10 seconds or so, and then you come back to the tab, it would automatically reload, because if you're looking at your dashboard, you always want to be up to date, right? So that's normally what you've been doing. You go back to your dashboard and then you reload, but now this is happening automatically. I love that feature. And yeah, like when migrating to Lit, we've also done much more reliable auto-saving of comments. So they're not just auto-saved on the client side, but on the server, and it's much more reliable now. And yeah, I also want to highlight 2 shortcuts that you might not know about yet. Is D plus number for download. I use that all the time. So if I look in a change and then I want to work on this locally, I always press D plus 2, D2, and then I have the download command in my in the clipboard that I can use on the terminal. And the other one I don't use that often, but sometimes it's nice that you can press V and arrow for patch set navigation. So if you're looking at not at the latest patch set, you can press V right or V up to get to the latest patch set.
I just wanted to say thanks for the work on the submit requirements, both backend and frontend, because it makes life way easier and is scalable, so the user can find out himself why a change is not submittable in a super easy way. So, well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question on the auto-reloadable dashboards, because so I know that some of the queries that the front end does to the back end have become a lot, let's say, more expensive for the back end to execute, specifically because they include now all the details for all the accounts and all the permissions they've got, what they can do, what they cannot do. And basically the front end is eagerly loading all that information for all the changes there on the page, and is asking the back end to give it back to the front end. So it's already creating a little bit of problem now, but let's say we have put some kind of mitigation in place. But I'm a bit worried if the user, without any explicit action from the user, if the front end start auto reloading that data, I didn't see, maybe I missed it, some differential patch thing from the backend, or is the front end asking for the entire set of data to the backend again?
It's asking for the entire set of data. So while you were talking, I've opened my dashboard, and I think 10 seconds have passed. So if I go here, you didn't even see it, but it has been has reloaded this completely. We don't think that this is actually causing more load, because that's what users have been doing anyway if they go to this tab. And then, I mean, it's only happening when this tab becomes visible, right? It's not constantly polling or anything. Just when we get this browser event, that the document becomes visible, and you haven't been on this page for more than 10 seconds, and you were on the dashboard, like only on the dashboard page we do this.
Okay.
Then we would request that we would reload basically the entire page, right? This is also, there's also, for example, for checks, there's a constant polling, like the default interval is 1 minute. So if you're looking at this and you're browsing and reviewing, every minute we would poll for checks, like ask all the checks plugins, like, do you have newer information? Then we would automatically update these results here. But we wouldn't do this as long as the tab is in the background. But I think you can also see, if I go here and now I go back, no, I don't. It should be reloading in the background. Probably it's not. It's the data is just the same, so you don't see it. But that's what's happening if you come back to the tab. But never anything is happening while something is in the background.
We are very happy with all these usability improvements, and I would say the audience, that's my opinion, but I believe all the audience here, they will agree. And we are really grateful for all the work that you guys doing, and the front end has become, it was really the last of sometimes it was embarrassing. I showed also in the previous talk the GUI of 2.13, and I was embarrassed personally, right? I said that was our GUI, and yeah. I would like to thank you from all of us, because the work you're doing on Gerrit is amazing. And Gerrit is becoming absolutely the best code review tool in terms of usability. So thank you very much to you and all your team.
Thank you. Just doing our job.